The Atlanta City Council approves legislation to create the Buckhead Public Safety Task Force. The group will include 18 members and work to enhance safety in Buckhead. The council approved legislation honoring the University of Georgia's football team, the university, and Bulldog fans on their successful 2021 season and national championship. The council greenlights a resolution requesting the city's chief operating officer and the Atlanta Department of Transportation present an account and reconciliation against the project list of completed and planned infrastructure bond and transportation special purpose local option sales tax T-SPLOST projects at the Transportation Committee meeting February 16, 2022. The council says yes to an ordinance to suspend provisions of the city's Code of Ordinances to waive the late filing fees, penalties, and sanctions that may be assessed for failure to renew licenses for the sale of alcohol through February 28th of 2022. For more recently approved legislation, please visit our website, citycouncil.atlantagaA.gov. This has been your Atlanta City Council Legislative Minute.
Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared powerful sentiments to his fellow clergymen in Letter from a Birmingham Jail. It was written in April of 1963. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. Before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored in this country without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of bottomless vitality, they continue to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. We will win our freedom because of the sacred heritage of our nation, and the eternal will of God are embodied in our echoing demands. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King shared these transformational words back in August of 1967 during an SAOC conference here in Atlanta, Georgia. I say to you today that I still stand by nonviolence, and I am still convinced that it is the most potent weapon available to the Negro in his struggle for justice in this country. And the other thing is that I am concerned about a better world. I am concerned about justice. I'm concerned about brotherhood. I am concerned about truth. And when one is concerned about these things, he can never advocate for violence. Darkness cannot put out darkness. Only light can do that. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright days of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared these words during a sermon at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. It was March 31st, 1968, just 4 days before his assassination. Somewhere we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals who are willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. So we must help time and realize that the time is always ripe to do right. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
In November of 1957, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached these transformative words during a sermon at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. It was entitled, Loving Your Enemies. Within the best of us, there is some evil. Within the worst of us, there is some good. When we come to see this, we take a different attitude towards individuals. The person who hates you the most has some good in him. Even the nation that hates you the most has some good in it. Even the race that hates you the most has some good in it. And when you come to the point that you look in the face of every man and see deep down within him what religion calls the image of God, you begin to love him in spite of. No matter what he does, you see God's image there. There is an element of goodness that he can never slough off. Discover the element of good in your enemy. And as you seek to hate him, find the center of goodness and place your attention there, and you will take a new attitude. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared these words during his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech in Oslo, Norway, back in 1964. I ask, why is this prize awarded to a movement which is beleaguered and committed to an unrelenting struggle, to a movement which has not won the very peace and brotherhood which is the essence of the Nobel Prize? After contemplation, I concluded that this award, which I receive on behalf of the movement, is a profound recognition that nonviolence is the answer to the critical, political, and moral question of our time, the need for man to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to violence and oppression. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of former District 3 resident Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Dr. Martin Luther King shared these powerful words during his Give Us the Ballot address at the prayer pilgrimage for freedom in May of 1957. Give us the ballot and we will no longer have to worry the federal government about our basic rights. Give us the ballot and we will no longer plead to the federal government for passage of an anti-lynching law. We will, by the power of our vote, write the law on the statute books of the South and bring an end to the dastardly acts of the hooded perpetrators of violence. Give us the ballot, and we will transform the salient misdeeds of bloodthirsty mobs into the calculated good deeds of orderly citizens. We recognize and honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Until the bright day of justice emerges. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday, January 26th, 2022 meeting of the Finance Executive Committee. I'm Alex Wan. I'll be chairing the meeting today, and look forward to our deliberations. The meeting is now officially called to order. We are supported very ably by Santana Kempson Wright, our Deputy Counsel Staff Director. Ms. Kempson Wright, if you will, by means of the convening roll call, introduce our members, please. Ms. Kempson Wright, are you there?
Good afternoon. Councilmember Alex Wan.
Present.
Councilmember Howard Shook.
Aye.
Councilmember Michael Julian Bund.
Aye.
Councilmember Jason Dozier.
Aye.
Councilmember Bakhtiari.
Present.
Councilmember Keisha Shawn Waits.
Present.
Councilmember Jason Winston.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Kempson Wright, and thank you, colleagues, for being with us in our committee meeting today. The next item on the agenda, item C, is the remote meeting statement. Ms. Kempson Wright, if you'll please read that for us.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This Finance Executive Committee meeting is being conducted remotely, as advertised and as in accordance with the Official Code of Georgia 5014-1. The meeting will be conducted in conformance with Robert's Rules of Order and the Rules of Council as authorized by City Code. The public may access the meeting by the following conference bridge, toll-free access 404-902-5066, conference ID 151945, which was noted on the Friday, January 21st public meeting notice. The public may also view the meeting on Channel 26, citycouncil.atlantaga.gov, or the Council's YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages via at ATL Council. All presentations are available on the Atlanta City Council Finance Executive Committee presentation page. The agenda was published and made available on Friday, January 21st by atlantacityga.iqm2.com. Public comment was accepted between the hours of 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. on yesterday, Tuesday, January 25th. All persons present on the presentation conference bridge are requested to mute your phones and speakers. Additionally, speakers must be acknowledged by the presiding officer prior to speaking. Each council member is requested to open your Outlook email and minimize the screen to view any amendments, substitutes, and informational documents which were distributed earlier and may be distributed during the meeting. Thank you all in advance for your cooperation.
Thank you, Ms. Kempson Wright. So I understand there was a delay in getting us up on air on Channel 26. Has that been resolved?
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
We are up on 26.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right, we'll continue on with our agenda item number D, which is adoption of the agenda. Colleagues, you have that before us. We will need to take an electronic vote on this. I will make a motion to adopt the agenda. Can I have a second from one of my colleagues, please?
Dozier, second.
Seconded by Dozier. The way we'll do this is those that are in e-boardroom, please cast your votes electronically first, and then Ms. Kempson Wright will follow up with a voice vote from those that are not in the system or unable to vote. So, Ms. Kempson Wright, please open the vote to adopt the agenda.
The vote is open. Councilmember Bund.
Aye.
Councilmember Waits.
Aye.
The vote is closed. Zero nays. The agenda has been adopted.
Thank you. We have the adopted agenda now before us. Next item E, approval of the minutes. Those were circulated to everyone earlier. If you've had a chance to read those, is there a motion to? I'll put forward a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Seconded by Shook. All right, Mr. Kempson Wright, if you'll open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
Aye.
Councilmember Waite?
Aye.
Thank you. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The approval of the minutes has been approved.
Thank you, colleagues. We've got the minutes approved in front of us. The next item on the agenda is item F, 2022 Finance Finance Executive Committee Goals and Objectives. Ms. Kempson Wright had circulated an initial draft of the 22 goals. You have a copy of that. Just wanted to let you know what I did with that was I took the 2021 goals. We scratched off the ones that were no longer applicable. And then I also kind of tried to group them in subject matter so that we kind of had some broader guideposts for us. I added two of them that just of note. One is the first bullet around analysis on federal funding within our budget, and then another one under financial management and oversight regarding our capital reserve, or also known as fund balance policy. I've spoken with a number of you who, and it sounds like we would like to take another 2 weeks to let this marinate a little bit more and for colleagues to think about other goals and objectives. So with that, I guess we'll just essentially put a pin in this. And if you will get any additions, edits, or other comments to Ms. Kempson Wright no later than Friday. I'm trying to think of when. The Friday before our next meeting, which will be on February 12th, I believe. If you'll do that, that would be great. And we will be prepared to move forward on this. By Wednesday, February 9th is when Ms. Kempson Wright would like to have those. We will address those and hopefully adopt those at that time. Any questions or comments on that before we move on? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move to public comment. Item number G. Ms. Kempson Wright, if you will play the recording from those that called in last night, please.
One moment.
And colleagues, just so you know, we have one comment of 1 minute, 45 seconds, just a smidge under 2 minutes.
Greetings, council members and staff. A special greeting to you citizens who have tuned to this Finance and Executive Committee meeting. Ed Howard, Senior Advocate, Public Policy Analyst. The Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, APAB, elected its 2022 officers, including a financial secretary. Thank goodness. In past years, financial reports were detailed, distributed, and discussed. This practice needs to be revised under the present administration of APAB. APAB members and the public need to know more about the financial transactions of the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board, and they need to know before ugly situations arise and money has to be returned. To get involved in APAB, please call 404-827-8011 and ask to be put on the list to be notified about APAB meetings. That's 404-827-8011. For more information about the Atlanta Planning Advisory Board and the neighborhood planning system in general, please contact the Department of Planning at 404-330-6145. That's 404-330-6145.
All right, thank you. That concludes our public comment from last evening. The next item on the agenda is H, presentations, status reports, and updates. We have two today. The first one is from the Georgia General Assembly Legislative Update from Kenyatta Mitchell. Hopefully, Ms. Mitchell, you're on the line. And the second will be the Department of Finance COVID-19 update. Colleagues, I'm going to ask that we let the presenters make their way through their presentation first. If you have questions, either click this Ask to Speak button in the e-boardroom. If those of you that are online on the phone, once I get that speaker's queue, I'll ask if any of y'all would like to be added to that list. But with that, Ms. Mitchell, are you on the phone with us today?
I am, Chairman.
Very good. Please proceed and tell us what's happening across the street.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Juan and the members of the Finance Committee. I am Kenyatta Mitchell, the Intergovernmental Affairs Director for Mayor Andre Dickens. So hello to all of y'all who have not got a chance to speak to yet. I will be making my way across the hall, but as you know, I'm drinking from a fire hose right now with the General Assembly, so please forgive me not making over to speak to all of you. Today we are on legislative day 6 of a 40-day session. We had a very rare opportunity to find out when the session was going to end in the beginning. For those of y'all who are familiar with the General Assembly, you typically don't know until much later in the session when it's going to end. So we are ending sine die, which is Latin for end of day. It's April 4th. So you'll be hearing a lot about sine die. That will be April 4th this year. So due to it being day 6 in a 40-day cycle, I don't have anything substantive at this point as far as updates. But as things progress, I will definitely have more to report. But because there are so many new members, I wanted to briefly mention our legislative package, which passed under the previous administration and council. It includes 7 items, and if the chair is okay, I'd like to go through some of those for the members of the committee.
Yes, please. Yes, please do that. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So the first is obviously, something that we all are near and dear to our hearts, which is protecting the existing city of Atlanta boundaries. As y'all know, this deals primarily with Buckhead de-annexation, but we're also really concerned about the integrity of municipal boundaries statewide. This bill has implications far beyond the city of Atlanta, and we are fighting to ensure that our citizens are proud to call themselves citizens of the city of Atlanta. So just so y'all are aware, if this legislation were to go through, obviously it will have a detrimental effect on the city, but it will also have an extreme adverse effect on the bonding ability for any municipality, and in fact, the entire state of Georgia. So we are fighting to ensure that Atlanta's boundaries are what they are today and the future. The second item, of course, is Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. The city opposes any action or legislation that seeks to change the ownership, operation, or governance of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Let me know if y'all have any questions about that, but this is a bill that has been bubbling up quite often and quite a bit over the past few years. Nothing is on the table right now that we are concerned about, but of course this is always something that we're keeping our eyes on. The third, and I've heard from a few members of council about housing affordability and court records. What we want to do is enable a property tax deferral to establish programs for lower income homeowners. We also want to create a state law that will seal evictions records where the tenant has prevailed, where they satisfy the terms of their agreement, their consent agreement, and if the eviction occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. We know a lot of people have had extenuating circumstances outside of their control because of this type of pandemic, and we want to make sure that this issue does not follow them for the rest of their lives where they're trying to rent properties. So this is something that we're also working very feverishly across the street on. The fourth thing is voting rights. I don't have to tell this council that voting rights is a fundamental right, especially with Councilman Bond on here. I mean, we've talked many times before about how we support voting rights in the city of Atlanta, and we are supporting any legislation or action that expands the access and opportunity for all eligible residents to vote, both in the city and the state. The fifth of my list is open meetings. So as we are doing right now, we are having a meeting that is remote for most of the folks to be able to participate wherever they are remotely. We are doing that because we have an emergency declaration. When that emergency declaration is over, we will have to go back to the traditional way that we held meetings. We would prefer to keep it this way because it provides better access to our citizens. It reduces the overall cost of the city, as well as reducing workload and travel demands of the members who are participating in city meetings. So we're definitely advocating that this is maintained. The sixth item, and of course not sixth in importance, but sixth on my list, is public safety. So requiring law enforcement agencies that enforce state law in a municipality to file the traffic citations in municipal court. That may sound a little jumbled, but what we're saying is that if you are a state or an authority who have a police department, that all of those traffic citations come through the City of Atlanta court. We think it will provide parity and ensure that we get revenue from infractions that occurred within our city limits. The final item I have here is ghost guns. I'm not sure if y'all are all familiar with ghost guns. I'm going to speak really briefly on what that is, but a ghost gun is a homemade gun made from easily obtained items that can be purchased with no background check. For those reasons, we are obviously against allowing ghost guns anywhere in the City of Atlanta and in the state of Georgia. So I will stop there. I know I said a lot, and see if y'all have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. I see Mr. Shook in the queue. Did anyone on the phone want to get added to the queue as well?
I would like to, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bond. I'll have you after our two speakers. So we've got Mr. Shook. Why don't you go first, followed by Mr. Dozier, and then Mr. Bond, and then I'll open it back up in case anybody else wants to ask some questions. Mr. Shook, you have the floor.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So could you please catch us up on the lobbyist lay of the land? Who are we paying who to do what?
So we have the folks from, I just went blank on their names. Let me send you that information. I completely went blank on the names of our firms. And sorry, I'm on day 15 of doing DR work. I have the names of the individuals. Give me 1 second. I can tell you. Oh, Holland & Knight. My apologies. Holland & Knight is doing our federal and state lobbying for us, as well as myself, obviously.
Okay, both parties.
Yes, federal and state.
Well, so what about in-state? Is there a Democrat team?
So the team is, I don't know all of their political affiliations, but they have relationships on both sides of the aisle. But they're not known as being a Democratic team, if that's what you're asking.
Well, I mean, that is what I'm asking because
okay.
It matters, but that's fine. I'm done. Thank you.
You know, you're absolutely right. It does matter. But this team was chosen obviously prior to my coming on board, but they are not known in any circles as being a Democratic team. So
in the past, we've had the GOP team and the Democrat team for kind of obvious reasons, but that's fine. Right. I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shook. We have Mr. Dozier next, followed by Mr. Bond, and then Ms. Bakhtiari.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Ms. Mitchell, just real quick, I was curious about the process that's typically taken by the mayor's office and by city council to provide input and insight into the legislative package. And I recognize that the current package was approved and determined before the current administration, the current city council. But just want to get your thoughts on, for the next cycle, when will we be able to provide some input or insight into the next round of the legislative package? I know you're still going through session right now, but would love to be able to work together to have something that could support our districts or support our communities that need some help at the state level. We'll love to be able to provide that before the next assembly. But just curious kind of what you're thinking as far as when that opportunity might be made available.
So the opportunity is always available. Obviously, for this session, we wouldn't be able to add additional things to to our legislative update, our legislative proposals to the state. But after the session, what we'll do is we'll set up meetings where we sit down and have conversations about what the body would like to add or subtract from this agenda. So it's a living, breathing document. It's something that we can go ahead and have discussions as soon as the session is over. But there's no hard and fast time because I know a lot of the folks, a lot of you all are new to this process. So I want to be cognizant of that and having conversations about, what works, what has passed in the past, and kind of what the process is. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Ms. Mitchell, before we move to Mr. Bond, while you have your 6 items that are priorities, I'm sure the city is always following other pieces of legislation that are going through.
Absolutely.
So I would imagine that if there are specific initiatives that council members are curious or interested in, that they can reach out to you and maybe just at least get understanding of where those pieces of legislation are at. While they may not be on the city's list, again, they would be of interest to the city. Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And you all are receiving additional information as more legislation is passed. We're in the second year of a biennial. What that means is that all legislation that has not died in the last term can come up at any time this year, and then everything that does not pass this year has to start all over again. So we'll have a fresh slate when we have those conversations next year. But yes, for this year, you all will be receiving periodic updates of bills that we think would have good or bad effects on the city of Atlanta.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Bond and Ms. Bakhtiari and Mr. Shook again.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your greetings and presentation today, Ms. Mitchell. It is good to hear your voice. So just a couple of questions. One, I know that the legislation for the Buckhead City movement was referred by the President of the Senate, I think, to the Urban Affairs Committee.
That's correct.
That's correct. Was there a companion piece of legislation in the House that we need to be concerned about, or was that the main bill?
So there is another piece of legislation in the House that we are tracking, and there are a few other pieces of legislation that we hear are going to be proposed, but we are keeping our eyes very intently on what's going on in the House, and we are also very thankful to Lieutenant Governor for passing that legislation to Urban Affairs. We feel we'll have a better voice and a better ability to have a conversation about the future of the city of Atlanta.
Okay, well, yeah, please keep a breath on that. And then on the ghost guns issue, I mean, it's alarming how many cities and counties across the country are grappling with this issue. But given the heavy influence of the gun lobby, do you have any predictions on where that might end, even dealt with before sine die?
I don't have any predictions yet, just because I have not had discussions with the leadership about how they feel about ghost guns at this point. Ghost guns are kind of precarious because they're not necessarily manufactured by a gun company. So My gut reaction is that they would not be as happy about these types of guns than the guns that they would actually manufacture and sell. One of the things that I do plan on doing is having conversations with some of the gun manufacturers to find out their thoughts on these types of guns, just to see what we're doing with the General Assembly.
And I know earlier in the year, I thought we had amended the package to deal with a municipality or county being able to put requirements on gun owners if they were transporting their weapon in a vehicle that they, have some type of lockbox or something in their vehicle to secure the weapon. Has that been a part of, or can it be a part of the conversation? Because here in the city of Atlanta, I believe we heard in public safety on Monday that there are literally thousands of guns that are the main place for these gangs and criminal organizations to get guns now is through theft, primarily through thefts from vehicles. Is that a part of the conversation? Because if it's not, it should be.
So that is not part of my list for this year, but I would absolutely, we can sit down and talk about that being part of the list for next year. That drives a lot of our car break-ins is people looking for unlocked, unsecured guns. So we can definitely have that conversation.
Yeah, I believe the number was in excess of 2,100 guns that have been recovered that were stolen. That's not the total amount of guns that has been stolen just in Atlanta from vehicles. So I thought we had passed a resolution about that in the fall, but I can check my record. Thank you for your presentation, and look forward to hearing more from Mr. Chair. I withdraw.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Ms. Bakhtiari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Mitchell, something I think you are already aware of how excited I am that we get to work with you. Thank you for your presentation. One of my questions was in regards to the issues with guns. Have we been tracking what's been happening with constitutional carry?
Yes, we have. We have been tracking constitutional carry. It is the governor's legislation, so the possibility of it passing is quite high, but we are absolutely tracking constitutional carry.
So it's already been, is he carrying it through both the House and the Senate, or just through one entity?
No, it will have to be carried through the House and the Senate.
I'm saying, does he have companion pieces on both sides, or just carrying it through one side?
The only piece that I've seen thus far, and I have not seen the entire list of everything that's been released last night, but right now it's just in the House.
Okay. And is there anything that council can do to help to work against this issue?
Yeah, that's something I've been giving a lot of. Go ahead.
I was saying, with everything we have going on, I'd be terrified by the idea of someone being able to carry without needing a permit.
Yeah, I would like to chat. One of the things that we want to talk about is this piece of legislation and find out the comfort level of council. And I need to talk to the mayor as well about how we want to respond to this legislation. I have not had that conversation yet. Like I said, I'm on day 15, but I will definitely, that's on my list of conversations to have to see to the extent that we want to have a conversation about that in relation to everything else that we are fighting for this year. So it is top of my mind, but I want to make sure that that we're in good graces with folks across the street.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. And the other question is just in regards to the fact that we just passed a resolution around Roe v. Wade. I was, obviously the city has made it very clear where we stand on that issue. Is anyone tracking the legislation that was dropped, I think, in the Senate, a woman's right to know? That looks like it would be some sort of trap laws around medical abortion.
Yes, we are definitely tracking that legislation. I had a conversation at the Capitol today about it. We haven't made any official comments about that legislation, but it is being tracked.
Okay. I will just wait to hear back from you once we have an update. I just wanted to make sure that was on our radar.
Oh, it is. Thank you.
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Ms. Bakhtiari. Next we have Ms. Waits, then followed by Mr. Shook.
Thank you so much. Ms. Mitchell, great to be working with you again. I have a question for you.
Absolutely.
What is the deadline for submitting local legislation?
Day 35. I have to look at my calendar to see when day 35 is, but it'll be day 35.
Okay, perfect. And do you know if there's any intention by the mayor to look at some type of local legislation? I think Councilmember Bakhtiari kind of alluded to this, that we could do specific to Fulton County, given that our needs are very different from the rural areas of Georgia, surrounding the carry legislation, in addition to strengthening penalties surrounding individuals who do these drive-bys or these egregious crimes. Is there some consideration to do it at a localized level?
There's a little bit of background noise. I wasn't able to really hear.
I'm in I apologize.
That's okay.
You need me to repeat it?
I do, because I couldn't hear.
Sure. So what I want to know is there any intention by the mayor to push for some localized legislation surrounding the carry piece, and secondly, something that we can do to strengthen penalties for individuals who commit these egregious crimes, such as the shooting that just recently happened with the 6-month-old child? I know in the past, the pushback from rural communities has been that our needs are very different from the urban communities. So is this something that we could push for at the Fulton County level to change those laws?
So I know that the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor have put forth some legislation that will deal with crime in general. And I apologize. There's some parts of what you said that I wasn't able to understand. So I'm going to answer to the extent that I think that you were asking. So we will be working with the Speaker's office as well as Lieutenant Governor's office on their anti-crime legislation package to determine which pieces we think would be most effective for the city of Atlanta. The Speaker has also put forth some legislation to assist with mental health, which we know is the backstory on a lot of the crime that we have both in the city and across the state. So I hope that answers your question, but apologies, I was able to hear a few words and not others. So I can always come by your office and answer that question if you have some more questions.
Thank you so much. I would love to catch up offline.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Waits. Mr. Shuck, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. So our relationship with Holiday Night seems to be the equivalent of a Catholic marriage. Please explain.
So because I'm Catholic, I don't know what a Catholic marriage is. So if you could help me understand what that means.
No, it means you can't go anywhere else.
Oh, you can't get divorced?
Correct. Unless you're from the Pope.
So currently our contract with them is month to month. I am not a fan of making any changes during legislative session, particularly this legislative session, because we have so much on the table and there's so much institutional knowledge there. But their contract is month to month, and they serve at the will of the mayor and our RFP process. So it's not quite a Catholic marriage. There is an ability for annulment. So we can definitely have a conversation about your thoughts. But I'm feeling that you have additional thoughts, but I just don't know.
Okay, that's fine. When was the last time there was a competitive procurement?
Let me get back to you on that because I don't know.
Yeah, because you probably got to go back to Sanskrit to find the record. But that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. Ms. Mitchell, anything else before we cut you loose to go back over there and do good work across the street for us?
Thank you so much. I will be sticking my head in everyone's offices, so you'll see me soon.
Very good. And then we'll work with you in terms of just having you come back regularly to give us updates on what's happening and things that we should have on our radar as well, please.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Mitchell. All right, colleagues, if there are no other questions, we'll wrap that presentation up and then move to the Department of Finance COVID-19 update. In the materials that Ms. Kempson Wright sent you today, you have the report of the COVID-19 funds, and I believe Jerry Deloach, Mr. Deloach, will be walking us through this. So, Mr. Deloach, I'll hand the floor over to you.
Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Juan and the rest of the Finance Committee. My name is Jerry Deloche, Chief Risk Officer for the City of Atlanta and the Department of Finance, and I will present the COVID-19 CFO report for the month of January. Slide 1, please, which is the cover page. Slide 2 is the COVID-19 reporting requirements. And I'd like to say from the beginning that if the committee, after the presentation of today's report, individual committee members or the committee as a whole would like an additional briefing for a fuller understanding, the Department of Finance will make itself available to accommodate the schedule of the committee members. Back in 2020, when COVID-19 developed, the City of Atlanta adopted 4 pieces of legislation which required the Chief Financial Officer to prepare and submit certain reports in a timely fashion regarding the financial impact of COVID-19. Those pieces of legislation include 20-R-3773, which requires the Chief Financial Officer to provide a report on the accounting of all federal and state funds the City of Atlanta has received or will receive to assist with battling the harmful effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. 20-R-3774 requires the Chief Financial Officer to provide the Council President and all members of this City Council an accounting of all funds that will be contributed to nonprofit and philanthropic organizations as part of the City's emergency assistance in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. 20-R-37 and 20-R-3914, they require that the Chief Financial Officer shall submit to the Atlanta City Council and to the Atlanta Ethics Office before the 15th of each month a report listing for the previous months the details of each donation. What I will present this afternoon is in compliance with the requirements passed by the Atlanta City Council and authorized by the mayor. Slide 3, please. On slide 3, there are 2 columns. We have an approved column and we have a pending column. In the approved column, it lists all funds that have been received by the City of Atlanta to date. Of importance, the total approved funds amount to $652,108,664.71. It ranges from the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Grant that was given to the by the Department of Justice to the Atlanta Police Department for $1.3 million. The Federal Aviation Administration gave to the Department of Aviation $338 million. We have received from FEMA for public assistance for monies we have already expended a reimbursement of $1.5 million. We also have pending from FEMA a reimbursement for Category Z expenses related to COVID-19, $105,000. You would note U.S. Department of Treasury, we commonly refer to that as the CARES Fund. That was the original fund that we received for $88 million. You will also see United States Department of Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance. We have received $27 million from that, and I'm just rounding it off. From the state, we received $69,000 related to our summer youth feeding program. For HOPWA, we have received $3.3 million. ESG Emergency Solutions Grant, we have received $12 million. CDBG, $4 million. And you will see that we have received another set of funds from the Department of Aviation for the coronavirus relief and response and relief supplemental appropriation for airport expense. That's another $77 million. And we have also received another grant from the Department of Aviation for concession relief for $11 million. And last on your list, you will see the American Rescue Plan, which is commonly referred to as ARPA. We have received one installment of $85 million for that. We will get the second installment for the ARPA in May of 2022. If you will look to the left side, we have pending the Georgia Law Enforcement and First Responders Supplemental Grant, which is for all sworn officers in the Department of Police, Department of Fire, and the Department of Corrections. That is currently under review by the state. In addition, we received notice in January. It's not listed here, but it will be included in the February report. We received notice from U.S. Treasury that the city will receive an additional $1.5 million for emergency rental assistance. Next slide, please. Page 4 is a breakdown of the United States Treasury CARES Act. When the city of Atlanta received those funds, it actually develop a spending plan that provided assistance for the city of Atlanta as well as for residents. We provided assistance, and I will give you the broader overview for that. For homeless, we provided $8.5 million. For our telework program, we provided $5.2 million. For food delivery, $1.8 million. For distance learning to help assist with public education, we provided $463,000. For public facilities, that's the City of Atlanta with Enterprise Asset Management, we provided $1.3 million. For testing, which was a partnership with the Fulton County Board of Health, we provided $5.9 million. For hazardous pay expenses, we provided $15 million. Two largest programs that provided direct economic support to residents included the economic support for the Consumer Grant Program, which was for rental assistance, which was for $23.5 million. And we also provide economic support for small business grants for $22 million. And the other small items were related to public health expenses for PPE, communication and enforcement, and technical assistance. And the next large item, 600.1, it was for $3 million, we provided for consultant services related to compliance and monitoring. Right now, yes.
Go ahead. Go and finish this slide and I have a quick question.
Right now, we have actually spent $85 million, and we have about 1.4 that has been obligated but has not actually received expense reports for those funds. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I'm breaking my own rule about questions at the end, but I just wanted to understand if I'm reading this table correctly, the remaining balance column should be the actual allocation, which is under budget CRF reallocation, less the obligated costs, correct?
That's correct. The remaining balance is included in the budget CRF reallocation. It just has not been accounted for. They have not submitted expenses to be charged against that account.
Okay, and that's the difference between obligated costs and actual costs is if we received the documentation for reimbursement, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So help me understand then why the next two columns are broken out, actual cost hazardous pay and actual cost salaries?
Well, because the actual cost for hazardous pay, if you follow it down to the end, at $15 million and the $71 million, that will give us the $86 million that we have spent thus far. So we have actually spent the cost for hazardous pay. We just separated hazardous pay because it was such a unique item.
Okay. And then finally, a negative balance in remaining balance means what?
What do you say, negative? I see where you see that now. That means that for that particular budget, they are over their budget by that amount, but we have taken that into consideration. It's just not showing the balance on here. But for whatever reason, they did go over. They were allocated $23,520,000, and they went over by $5,542. But we did take that into consideration when we did a reallocation, and we'll correct that. But they are not actual over budget.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, please continue on, and then we'll take questions from.
On the next slide, page 5. Page 5 talks about the ERA, Emergency Rental Assistance Obligation and Breakdown. As I indicated to you earlier, we have received a total of $27,326,347.10 specifically for emergency rental assistance. That's the way the Treasury sent us the money, and we could only use the emergency rental funds for rental assistance as well as for utility assistance like water, utilities, internet, those type of activities. Thus far, we have obligated $15,255,000, and in December we executed a second contract with United Way, and so that remaining balance of $12 million, it is under contract with United Way. Just as a point of reference, between the $27 million that we have received for emergency rental assistance specifically and the $22 million that we had that we obligated on the CARES, the city has spent almost $49 million on emergency rental assistance to residents of the city of Atlanta since April of 2020. And this does not include the 1.5 that we will be receiving shortly. The next slide is a breakdown. Slide number 6 is a breakdown of the fund, American Rescue Plan Act. We received $85.4 million. Thus far, we have obligated costs of $12.5 million, and we have actual costs of $11 million, with an available balance of $72.8 million. Of that $72.8 million, $64 million of that has already been accounted for in terms of lost revenue. Of significance that I want to bring to the committee's attention is that we have obligated $9 million of $602.2 to be administered by Invest Atlanta for small businesses. And we also have the on line 602.1 to address the economic effects of nonprofits. We have obligated to United Way $1 million for those expenses, and that's for our Elevate Atlanta program. Okay. The next slide, which is slide number 7, is a breakdown of the funds that were received at the Department of Aviation from the Federal Aviation Administration. The total amount received from the Federal Aviation Administration is $338.5 million. Our obligated cost at this point is $231.3 million, and the actual cost of $231.3 million, and has available balance at the Department of Aviation for $107.1 million. Next slide, please. Slide 8. This is the spend breakdown for the emergency solution grants, which is being administered by departments of grants. The funded amount for emergency solution was $12.7 million. Obligated cost as of today is $5.07 million, and actual cost of $5.07 million, with an available balance of $7.6 billion. Next slide, please, which is slide 9. It's the Community Development Block Grant. The spend breakdown details. We have received $4.2 million. We have obligated costs of $2.9 million. We have actual costs of $2.9 and an available balance of $1.27. The next slide, please. Slide number 10 is the Hopper Grant. The funded amount is $3.3 million. The obligated cost of $59 million. The actual cost, the obligated cost of $59,000. The actual cost of $59,000. We have an available balance of $3.2 million. Just for a point of reference, Hopper, ESG, and CDBG, all of these funds I'm specifically referencing were all provided to the City of Atlanta to respond to those specific categories to respond to COVID-19. These are additional funds to respond specifically to COVID-19. The Atlanta Police Department grant spend breakdown details. The Atlanta Police Department received a grant in the amount of $1.38 million. They have obligated costs of $814,000, actual costs of $814,000, and they have an available balance of $565,000. The next slide, slide 12, is a breakdown of nonprofit and philanthropic organizations that have received funds from the City of Atlanta. That includes Georgia's Own Credit Union, which received $1.5 million. $1.5 million, and those funds were to provide financial support to employees of the City of Atlanta contractors. That was very early at the beginning of the pandemic. Invest Atlanta received funds of $1.5 million to provide financial support to small businesses impacted by COVID-19, and they were able to serve 59 businesses. And the last one is Invest Atlanta, in collaboration with United Way, to provide financial support to help the homeless population, $1 million, and they were able to serve 500 recipients. Slide number 13, as required by legislation, is a breakdown of donations received by the City of Atlanta. We've been tracking this as FY20, FY21, and we are currently tracking it based on quarters for FY22. At the end of FY22, we will roll those numbers up, and then we will give you a total for FY22, just like we did for FY20 and 21. Okay? Thus far, we have received $1,098,096.54 in donations. And if you look at the lower block, it indicates the breakdown based on departments and how those funds have been received across the various fiscal years. Slides 14, 15, 16, and slide 17 is in conformance with the ordinance, which provides the detailed information for purpose of providing it to the Office of Ethics, to the Ethics Office. Okay. Slide 19 is a breakdown of all of the expenditures and where the funding came from to provide for those particular expenditures. Okay. This is to provide a balance between expenditures and budgets, between expenditures and funds, to make sure that we're providing an accounting for all of the expenditures and all of the funds, and it balances out. If you will look in the budget expenditures, all the way down to the very bottom, over to the $153 million, that shows you that we have expenditures thus far of $153,307,483.42. And if you go over to the funding, you will see the breakdown of $153,807,483.42. The various funds that have provided funding for our COVID-19 response include the CARES Act, as I talked about earlier, the Emergency Rental Assistance, American Rescue Plan, the state and FEMA, and for city funds. The city funds column are expenses that have been incurred by the city that will, at the end, either be absorbed by the city or will be transferred to one of the other funding sources if it is eligible. Of importance to note, we have submitted to FEMA a request for funding. Right now, if you look at the top in funding, FEMA 100%, and go all the way down to the bottom, you'll see $36 million, $36,167,137.70. That's what we have pending with FEMA for our hazardous pay through July of 2021. From the time CARES stopped paying for hazardous pay and the city started paying it, that is pending before FEMA. That $36 million includes $25 million for hazardous pay, and the balance of that $10 million is for other expenses that we have incurred in response to COVID-19 that we believe is eligible for funding from FEMA, and we're just waiting for them to respond to us. The city's obligation at this point for resources that have been used by the city that are the city's obligation is right now totals about $7.9 billion. And that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Deloach. We'll now take questions from the committee. I've got a slew of them, but I'm going to defer first to Councilmember Bakhtiari, followed by Councilmember Dozier.
Hi. Yes, thank you for your presentation. I have just a couple of questions I was just hoping for an expansion on.
I lost you or you lost me? I can't hear you.
Ms. Bakhtiari, are you there?
I mean, the cost is what? And I wonder what did that...
Ms. Bakhtiari, you're going to need to... Ms. Bakhtiari, you're going to need to start over. I think your sound went out right as you were beginning your question. So if you start your question over again, please.
Hello?
We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
My phone seems to be coming out. Let me try calling again on my...
Okay, so I'm going to move on to Mr. Dozier and then come back as soon as you're back on, okay? Okay,
thank you.
Mr. Dozier.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I just had a quick question in terms of how the accounting works. You know, the donations that you shared kind of stuck out to me. That's roughly $650,000 from the Atlanta Fire Foundation, $316,000 from the state of New York. And it looks like with the breakdown, these are in-kind contributions, in-kind donations. Is that accounted for I guess it's interesting to me that it's accounted for on the same spreadsheet where there might be some cash donations. If you could clarify kind of how the city manages or addresses those in-kind donations. Is it done as a separate reporting column? I don't know if I don't have a finance background, so I don't know if I'm asking the question in the technical way, but if you could provide some insight on how that in-kind reporting works and how that aligns with any other donations we might have received from on a grant or cash or any other sort of basis.
And I would defer to the Deputy CFO if she's on the line, but it does not appear on the document you have before you as a cash donation. It appears, as we're reporting now, as a separate in-kind donation. So it does not appear as a cash contribution to the city. Because most of the time, they were providing actual goods and not cash donations.
Where would that be, if I were to look at this spreadsheet without the context of the slide presentation, and I stumbled upon this, where would it be indicated that this is an in-kind donation?
It is not. It would not on slide number 18, which is correct. It does not appear on this particular slide.
Well, not even on slide 18, but even some of the other ones where the donation details like 13 through 17. I was I want to get my finance brain, kind of going to make sure if I look at something, because initially when I saw the donations, I thought they were cash donations, but looking at the breakdown, I can see that they're clearly in kind. It was an exchange of goods. But I just want to be more understanding of kind of where that is indicated in this as future reports come to the committee.
It is reflected just like it's presented on page 13, which is the overall summary, and then 14 through 17 provides the detail. That's the only place it's going to show up at.
Okay, no worries. That makes sense. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Okay.
Mr. Dozier, are you good now?
Yes, that concludes my questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bakhtiari, I believe you're back on line.
Yes, I'm here. And I apologize about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I apologize if any of the questions I'm about to ask were just asked by Councilmember Dozier. What I was trying to allude to before, I was just asking for some additional details on some of these expenses. On page 4, the first line where it says public health measures in regards to the homeless population, I'm curious as to what this entails.
Okay. On page 4, the city allocated $8.5 million. Our external partner for that included Partners for Home, who's provided housing solutions, including placing the residents in rental units, providing them with what we call startup kits, including furniture. And then a portion of that also went to provide assistance for people as they transitioned from what we, at that time, we had a hotel that was providing lodging, and they provided lodging for them in the hotels until they were moved into a much more permanent housing solution. And this program, the homeless program that we're talking about, it was much more different from the rental assistance program, and it was geared toward people who were actually homeless.
Say that last sentence again.
100.1, the $8.5 million, it was actually geared toward people who are homeless at the time.
Okay. Understood. Is there any type of numbers on who we assisted on if they were able to stay in housing versus if they get back up on the street again?
I can provide you with those numbers. I don't have that with you, but I can provide those numbers.
If you wouldn't mind getting those numbers to us this week, that would be really helpful. We've had an issue with it's an issue in every city that's doing outreach with our unsheltered populations is keeping people housed. So I would like to see if we've had any issues with that in this area. The next line was 100.3 with food delivery. Where was this food delivery conducted with unsheltered encampments? With who?
The food program described here, it was a food program for elderly residents.
With elderly residents. Okay. And that was conducted through Parks and Rec?
That is correct, yes.
All right. And then 300.1 with the hazard pay. Who was the hazard pay distributed to?
That was distributed to city employees who fell within the guidelines that were established by council. And the determination as to whether or not they were eligible was made by HR. And so that's what that's reflective of.
Were these employees throughout the city or just city employees?
No, they were city employees employed by the city of Atlanta.
Employed by the city of Atlanta. Okay. And the next page, page 5, where it says the ERA program with United Way, we still have $12 million, around $12 million left. Is there a date when this money must be spent by?
Actually, the $12 million has already been obligated, but the date for which it must be spent on is September 2024, because that is ERA 2 money.
You said September 2024?
Yes, but it will be spent sooner than that, because it's already on the obligation for them to spend as we speak.
Okay, so the money's already been earmarked, so it will be spent by 2024?
Most definitely, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I hope you can understand me asking that question. We've had an issue in the past of spending money that we get and having to return it if it's not spent in time. And the other question I wanted to ask was in relation to HOPWA, the HOPWA grants, page 10. You mentioned that that this was separate from the HOPWA fund. Could you elaborate on what this money is? Because I was unaware that we had additional money around HOPWA.
This grant here is specifically when Congress allocated funds at the beginning of COVID-19. They specifically allocated additional funds for some of the programs like HOPWA, and that allowed us to get additional funds of $3.3 to assist housing opportunities for people with AIDS as a result of the impact by COVID-19.
And has this money been completely? The available balance still there is $3.2 million.
Correct, and this particular grant is actually being managed and administered by the Department of Grants. And so, if you need additional information other than what I provided, we can ask them to assist you with the additional information that you need.
You said Department of what? I'm sorry.
Grants.
Department of Grants. Okay. Is there also a date in which this money must be spent by?
I'm not familiar with the date, but I'm sure there is. But that would have to come from grants.
Okay. And then my last question was on page 13 with the donation summary. So is this money that we have? Could you explain? So I was having trouble with my audio at the time. Now I'm realizing there was an issue with my phone. I apologize. Could you explain what the donations are?
These are not actual cash donations. These are actual in-kind donations in terms of goods that were provided to the city. And at the time, we were tracking it because FEMA would allow you to use donations to offset the matching funds. So that's how we originally started tracking it. And so we had to assign a dollar value to it. But these are not actual cash dollars, but these are actual a dollar value assigned, reasonable value assigned to the goods that were provided to the city.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right.
I appreciate it. Mr. Chair, that concludes my question.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair, this is Waits.
Please proceed, Ms. Waits. You have the floor.
No. Are you ready for my question?
Absolutely. Please go ahead, and then I'll follow up with mine. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you so much. I just simply wanted to expound and ask a further question surrounding the HOPWA funds. And this is directed to you, Mr. Chair. Who is the appropriate person to ask for some type of audit of all of the funding surrounding the HOPWA grants? Where would I direct that question to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Technically, the program itself would fall under, and the program administration would fall under CDHS, so Councilmember Dozier chairs that. Although if there are financial kind of processing, those type of questions, and financial administration questions that we could potentially jointly, our committee and that committee, dive into that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to request that happen. And secondly, I know that the APD officers have been paid hazard duty pay, but it has been brought to my attention that the 911 dispatchers never received $1,000 funding. Where is the appropriate place to ask that question? Is it now in finance, or would that be a public safety question?
So I would say it could be in both. My intent was I first have some other payroll issues that I wanted to kind of glean and gather, and then when at our next finance committee meeting, when they come back with the quarterly report and we can see kind of performance, obviously payroll is one of our biggest numbers in every department. So I think that might be our first vehicle to ask those type of questions and get kind of reconciliation about things that were supposed to be done that weren't.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Ms. Bakhtiari, I see you back in the queue. Why don't you kind of jump in and then I'll ask my questions.
Yeah, I just have one more question. So, and this may also be directed to you, Mr. Chair. Is this money that so you can get on the HOPWA grant, is this additional funds that are available, this $3.2 million balance, is this in addition to the money that we already have? Because obviously yesterday we passed a number of things in regards, out of CDHS in regards to HOPWA. So is this money that is additionally available outside of what was allocated yesterday?
Mr. DeLoach, I'm under the understanding that yes. The question to our answer is yes, that this was supplemental funding outside of the regular annual program funding that we get from them. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from my colleagues? I do have a question. This is in regards to when we receive the funds and we are moving them through these different programs, is the city getting compensated or receiving any sort of administrative percentage that's deducted from the total grant proceeds?
No, no.
Okay.
All of the funds.
So nothing that's charged to the grants.
Yes.
Okay. Then when we pass them back then again one more time through someone like United Way or Invest Atlanta, are they then compensated for any sort of admin or processing activity?
They do receive compensation for administrating the program in conformance with the federal regulations. Yes, they do receive compensation.
Okay. Mr. DeLoach, offline, I'd like to just get an accounting of that. With this money, I think our priority should be to try and get as much of it to the end user as possible. And I understand that sometimes, there are better administrators than we are, but I think it'd be just helpful for me to know offline what that has amounted to. I'm hoping it's just a low roar. It doesn't seem like a lot of money has been moved out to other agencies to distribute and administer for us, but just want to make sure that is the case. The other piece that I wanted to ask is in regard to the available balances on each of these different programs. I understand that these reports are quarterly to us. Is that correct?
Monthly.
Okay. So I think that's just something that, given especially Councilmember Bakhtiari's questions regarding deadlines, spend deadlines, we definitely want to keep track of that. And hopefully there is a plan for each one of the balances to push the money out. I mean, obviously, these funds were provided in time of crisis. We're still in that crisis, and it's better to, in my opinion, to get the funds to the end user as quickly as possible and as close to the full grant amount as possible as well. Has any of the remaining available balances that we're still holding been a function of processing challenges or decisions on how to find grantees? I mean, is it just a timing issue, or is there anything structural and procedural and operational that we need to discuss and help break any log jams?
Point well taken. If you go to page 4, that will show you that we have an available balance of $1.4 million. This is the original CARES grant that came through. The time period for obligating those funds was December 31st. We have obligated all of the funds before December 31st, and we expect between now and September 30th of 2022 for them to provide expenses that will take care of this available balance.
So if I hear you correctly then, so for example, if I go back and take a look at the HOPWA funds and see a available balance of $3.2 million, are you telling me that those are all obligated, or most of it's obligated?
No.
Okay.
I'm only speaking as it relates to page 4, which is the CARES Act. Those funds, $88.4 million that we originally received. That statement was in reference to them. If you need more detailed information about the time period, because we're only reporting on the ESG, we're only reporting the numbers on that. The actual administration and management of that is with the Department of Grants. So if you need specific information about the time period, and we'll include that going forward, the deadlines for the grant period, that information will have to come specifically from the Department of Grants.
Okay, I got you. So I guess it's incumbent upon us then to kind of watch these available balances on the rest of the pages, and if there's not movement, timely movement, and decreases in those, then raise flags to find out why and what the log jams are. Is that fair?
That's correct. And what we'll do going forward is include on the summary sheet the grant period, so that you'll know whether or not we're coming up close on a deadline and immediate action needs to be taken.
Yeah, I just echo Councilmember Bakhtiari's comments about, it would be a real shame for us, knowing that there is great need out there, the fact that we have funds to support programs, and that we are unable to get the money out for whatever reason that could have been addressed or resolved. So, yeah, we'll definitely be watching this. Ms. Bakhtiari, I see you in the queue. I don't know if that's just from the previous question you had.
No, I'm so sorry. I had additional questions, if that is okay.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Apologize, guys. So, sorry again. To follow up on some of Mr. Chair's questions, I'm looking again at page 4 and seeing additional funds that seem the remaining balance around hazard pay as well as the miscellaneous costs. I guess, again, the spending deadline on those issues. What is the requirement here? What qualifies under miscellaneous costs? How that money can be allocated? If that is a question you can answer, if there's another department in which we will have to go to understand how that money can be spent.
The remaining balance, those funds have already been obligated to be spent. The only thing that we're waiting on is for the various programs to submit expenses that we can charge against this remaining balance, and then they'll move over to actual costs. The deadline for this 1.4 is September 30th, 2022.
Okay. And then on page 12, I noticed that Invest Atlanta through United Way also provided an additional $1 million to support the homeless population. Is this separate from what from the health measures that you mentioned earlier through Partners for Home?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any idea of how that money was spent?
It was spent through our relationship with Partners for Home, and this is money that was spent before we got the before we got the CARES funding and allocated them the money through CARES, the $8 billion.
So this $1 million through United Way on page 12 was in addition to the $8.5 million that was allocated through the CARES Act. CARES Act.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and do we have a detailed account of how Partners for Home spent that money? That can be provided by the next call.
It will be provided specifically, but right now it's showing that it assisted 500 people, 500 residents. But we'll give you specific information related to that.
Yeah, I would just like to see how it was given to the 500 residents, and if there's a way to track whether or not they're still housed or not, because there are reports that some people ended up back on the street. So I would love to know that if that's possible, so we can find out why that is. In addition to, and again, echoing what Councilmember Waite said earlier around APD, the grant breakdown, how that we would be exploring the 911 operators, which I think is an excellent point. Do we know if any of this was any additional funding was allocated to firefighters, or this was just specifically for APD?
Okay, and I heard her make a reference to the $1,000, and is that the reference to the state supplemental grant that she was referring to?
That is correct.
Okay, and as I reported out on page 2, we have an application with the state of Georgia for a supplemental grant. I will go, and her question was specifically related to dispatchers. One of the requirements was that the recipients of that $1,000 had to be post-certified. I'll go back and check to see whether or not dispatchers are post-certified, because that is one of the criteria for receiving the grant, that they have to be post-certified.
And do we know if the same was given? Go ahead, Keith. Go ahead, Councilmember Wade. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Councilmember. This is something I'm very passionate about. The individuals were told they would receive these funds.
We've applied to the state of Georgia for the funds. The state of Georgia has not granted us the funds yet. We're waiting on the state to send us the money.
Thank you.
And then my question was just, so there's also $565,000 left available balance on them for this as well, or has that money also been earmarked?
Which page are you referring to?
Page 11 for the...
Yeah, I see it now, page 4. That has been earmarked for hazardous space, but it has not been moved up to actual costs.
Page 11 for the page 11 under the Atlanta Police Department grant. It says available balance of $565,000.
Correct. Okay. That is the available balance for use of that grant in conformance with the grant agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Bakhtiari. Mr. Deloach, thank you for your patience. Obviously, you've got some fresh council members that are getting a look at this for the first time. But, go ahead.
And once again, we will make ourselves available to have further conversations so they can have a better understanding and get any questions answered before the next committee meeting or during the course of this session.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Deloach. All right. If there are no other questions, we'll proceed on with our agenda. We'll move into the consent agenda. Item I, ordinances for first read. Ms. Campson-Wright, if you could read those in, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 1 is 22-1090, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute all documents necessary for the acquisition of certain property interests necessary for the Campbellton Road Pedestrian Improvements Project, authorizing negotiations with property owners for the acquisition of such property interests, authorizing title searches, appraisal surveys, and any other items necessary for the acquisition of such property interests, authorizing the mayor and the city attorney in the event negotiations are unsuccessful to institute condemnation proceedings pursuant to the Official Code of Georgia 3231, waiving certain provisions of Article 10, Real Estate and Procurement Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation, all contracted work to be and payments for property interest to be paid from account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Item number 2 is 22-1091, an ordinance authorizing the Chief Financial Officer on behalf of the Department of Transportation to transfer funds generated from abandonments, encroachments, and right-of-way dining fees to the Encroachment and Abandonment Fund Project. Item number 3 is 22-1092, an ordinance authorizing the Chief Financial Officer or his designee to amend the fiscal year 2022 General Government Capital Outlay Fund budget on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation by transferring between Transportation Impact Fee project accounts as listed in Exhibit A to unrestricted to be utilized for future projects and other purposes. The sum of $2,537,230.45. Item number 4 is 22-1093, an ordinance authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget by adding to anticipations and appropriations bond proceeds and the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $95,090,000.00 in connection with the Atlanta Urban Redevelopment Agency and its revenue bonds. And the final first read is 22-1094, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee to ratify services rendered in connection with agreement FC 9726 wireless communication devices, voice, and data services with Verizon Wireless Services, LLC, beginning January 31st, 2022, and to authorize the mayor and his designee to exercise the third renewal option under the agreement on behalf of the Department of Atlanta Information Management for a term of 6 months, retroactively effective from January 31st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022, in an amount not to exceed $1,977,231.17 in accordance with Section 21163, subsection C of Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, all contractor work to be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organizations, and account numbers listed herein and for the purposes.
Thank you, Ms. Kempson-Wright, for that sneak preview of what will be before us on February 16th. Well, we'll move on with our regular agenda. Item J, ordinances for second read. First item is 22-0-1031, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the officer to remit funds collected from blank in an amount not to exceed $500,000.00 to be used to fund the Atlanta Jazz Festival, to be paid to and from accounts listed below and for other purposes. Colleagues, we have a kind of a replacement paper for this, which is item number 14. So what we need to do on this first ordinance is to file this, and then we will take up item 14 in its stead. So I'm going to offer a motion to file. Can I get a second from a committee member, please?
Second. Wait, second.
Okay. Seconded by Waits. Is there any discussion on that? Motion to file. If not, Ms. Kempson-Wright, please open the vote.
The vote is open. Councilmember Bond.
Aye.
Councilmember Waits.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Shook.
Yep, sorry. I thought I was the second.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had Ms. Waits as a second. One second. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item has been filed.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and thank you, colleagues. We're going to go ahead and take item number 14, 22-0-1069, an ordinance by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to amend the fiscal year 2022 budget by transferring funds from the General Fund non-departmental account to the Jazz Festival non-capital trust fund account in the amount of $400,000.00 to support the 2022 Atlanta Jazz Festival, and authorizing that all Jazz Festival contract work shall be paid from the accounts listed herein and for other purposes. Ms. Love, are you on the phone with us to talk us through this paper, please?
Okay, I'm here.
Ms. Love, thank you. What can you tell us about this paper?
Well, the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs produces the Atlanta Jazz Festival on behalf of the City of Atlanta. And it is a free jazz festival that depends on this contribution plus funds from sponsors and from vending in order to produce it. And so this funding will be used to pay for the operating expenses for the Jazz Festival.
Do we have questions from any of my colleagues?
Yeah, Shook.
All right, Shook, and then back to Ari. Shook, please proceed. You have the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So are we still operating under the theory that there's a financial issue, a COVID issue, a recession issue that prevents you from charging market rates?
Well, the Jazz Festival is a traditionally free event for the public. And so... Understood. Okay. So we don't have a revenue source that we're not charging for anything for the festival for the general public. Not being able to raise enough sponsorship money, I think that has been an issue for us. Over the years, costs have gone up, and we have always depended on some contribution from the City of Atlanta to support this festival.
Well, I understood that. You know, I'm from around here. It may be unrealistic to think that the private sector by itself is going to fund this. I just get worried about this increasingly comfortable reliance on taxpayers to make up the difference when we're not real sure who's doing what to who. But thank you, Mr. Warren.
Okay. Well, if I could just that for a minute. If you can see by the to you, 85% of the people who come to the festival are Atlantans. So this is something that Atlantans are getting for their tax dollars. And it is an opportunity for families to come out and celebrate graduations, family reunions, other events. And it has traditionally been free for the community. And we, for years, didn't depend on any sponsorship dollars, council member, because it was paid for by hotel motel tax. And so we have shifted over the years to figure out how to continually produce this festival so that we could remain keep the tradition of it being free. We are going to introduce this year an opportunity for the public to pay for a special seating area, and we'll test that out and see if that will be one way that we can generate some revenue that could help offset what we're asking the city to contribute.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Ms. Bakhtiari.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Love. I am curious as to what is the overall budget for the Jazz Festival?
The budget varies depending on the talent, but it varies from between $700,000 to $1 million.
And what was the budget pre-COVID? What were we spending on the Jazz Festival before COVID?
Well, it's always been in that range.
It's always in that range. Okay.
It's always in that range. And again, council member, it depends on what level of talent they're able to book based on the amount of money that they have. And what we are doing this year as one way to try to reduce our budget is to go from having 2 stages to 1 stage, but adding a stage so that we will have what will be a credible festival. And again, we're going to test out some of these other potential ways of allowing the public to pay for services or special areas as one way to try to generate some funding.
Okay, and do we have an anticipated turnout that we would expect during May, expecting that the pandemic will still be ongoing?
Typically, the festival generates about 100,000 visitors. And last year, I don't know if you were aware, but we actually collaborated with Quincy Jones's network, Quest TV, in order to live stream the festival so that we could encourage people who were not wanting to come out to have that experience, to be able to experience the festival. That's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. The festival depends on people coming out and buying from the vendors, and the sponsors are looking for numbers. And so we want to have a credible event, but we also want to have a safe event. The fact that we're outside has helped us tremendously.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Love.
You're welcome.
Any other questions before I ask my questions? Okay, I don't think one there. Yes, is that Ms. Waits?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Waits, please go, and then Mr. Bond, you're on deck right behind her. Thank you.
Sure, I don't want to be leading today, but I was just curious, and you already answered questions surrounding specialty seating. I've seen other venues have some success with supplementing their funding. My second question is regarding sponsorship opportunities. I've been approached by some corporations and business owners asking if there are any nonprofits or special pet projects that I would like to support or see funding go to through their foundations. And so this is one of the ones that I would like to see that happen with. So I guess my question is do you guys solicit corporate sponsorships for this event?
Yes, we do. And we will be happy to share a sponsorship package with you. I'll send it to you via email. Yeah, we're working with the mayor's office. Kelly Ross is assisting us with sponsorships this year. Last year, we got about $120,000 in sponsorship dollars. So we are actively seeking sponsorships. Let me also say this before we end. Council members, you'll be receiving an email from me regarding an event that we have that is available for your neighborhood called the Neighborhood Jazz Series. And this is an opportunity for council members to provide an event in their district for their constituents during the month of May. You'll be receiving some information from me, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right. Ms. Waits, any other questions before I move to Mr. Bond?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bond, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, of course, thank you, Ms. Love, for your presentation. I guess I'll ask my first question since we were talking about the Neighborhood Jazz Series. The cost of that has gone up over the last couple of years. Will this funding help to keep that funding from increasing? Because council budgets, are static. They're not increasing at all. We want to bring these events to our communities. So I guess the short question is our cost going to go up for the neighborhood series? Will this help to offset?
We're gonna do all that we can to keep your costs steady, and we are seeking sponsorship for the Neighborhood Jazz Series. That is one way that we can help keep the cost down. But we don't go into every council district, and so as you know, we ask the council people for those districts to support the event in their community. Right now, I think it's like at $6,000 or $7,000, and that is just to pay for the cost of the bathrooms, the backline, the performers, and they're wanting more money. But I hear you, and we will do all that we can to try to keep those costs down. But also expect the communication from me, because there are 15 council members, but there are only 7 Saturdays and Sundays in May where we can program. So if you're interested in doing a neighborhood jazz event, please respond sooner than later.
Right, and so I mean that's $7,000. That's steep for a council office, and hopefully, because what I'm, I guess, kind of leaning into is that if this allocation that you're requesting, if it's not enough, I mean, let's get what we can, because when we've started out, at least when I got back down here, starting out, it was about $5,000, and I think you can, that wasn't too steep. But if we need to get more out of non-departmental, perhaps we should, get those dollars now while we're at the well. But we can talk about it. You understand what I mean?
Absolutely. So, we are trying to keep all of our costs down. And as I said before, we are soliciting sponsorships, and we are trying to present the Neighborhood Jazz Series sponsorship opportunity. So when the communication goes out to you, if the council members who are interested respond quickly, then that helps me be able to say to a potential sponsor, these are the neighborhoods where the Neighborhood Jazz Series is going to happen. And that might help incentivize some of them to give.
Okay, well, I can tell you now, we want one at Cook Park.
I know that, I'm sure. And we'll be happy to provide one for you.
Okay, and then my follow-up is, when did the funding leave the realm of the hotel motel tax? I know the tax has been down, obviously, during COVID, but that would seem to be the natural source, for this.
Okay. I think it was around 2008 when the economy went bad. The hotel tax allocation was reallocated, I think, to police and fire. And this office had received $1 million annual from the hotel motel tax produced the Atlanta Jazz Festival and the Montreux Jazz Festival in Atlanta. Those funds dried up. So we then decided to only do the Atlanta Jazz Festival. And then we also went out and began to seek corporate sponsorship. So we have over the years gotten some allocations from hotel motel tax, depending on what was not allocated out. And we have gotten some funding from the car rental tax, but I think that has also been depleted. But that doesn't change the fact that we still need support from the city, and we appreciate it.
Well, I don't think that the police and fire are pulling on the hotel motel tax anymore. At least that's what I recall. I don't think that's happening anymore. So, Mr. Chair and Ms. Love and Mr. CFO, Mr. Bala, I think it's probably time to have a conversation and revisit that. You know, even though understanding that during the pandemic that the hotel motel tax is obviously down because, the hotel stays were affected by the pandemic. But as things return and we rebound, I think we should look at that again. But with that, I will withdraw. But thank you, Ms. Love. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. I made a note to go back and revisit the hotel motel tax. I seem to recall a portion of that going to help with the bonds on Mercedes-Benz Stadium as well. So I think it's been pulled and tugged in all directions.
Yeah, it's specifically for tourism and promotion. So I mean, it says in the creation legislation for the hotel motel tax that it's also to build arenas. I mean, it actually states that. So, but I mean, this is Montreux and Atlanta Jazz Festival, as Ms. Love can tell you, there used to be a destination festival for the city. Not just, even though it's great, 85% of folks that come are Atlantans now, but it used to be a destination, and it should be again. And so, I mean, it's a legitimate expense, coming out of that line item as it rebounds as we hopefully move away from the pandemic.
Appreciate that perspective, Mr. Bond. If there's no one else that has any questions, I have a couple, and it's really for finance around this. So, Ms. Kempson-Wright, I hope there's someone on finance that can answer this question. It's my understanding that this $400,000 is simply a transfer or reallocation of funds that the previous council committed to the Peach Drop, which was then canceled. So I have, and I also understand that this $400,000 is coming from our reserve fund balance. I'm not sure who wants to switch term, but so I have two questions. Number one is, three questions. One, I want to confirm that my understanding of the source of funds is correct, and again, via the Peach Drop. Second question is to confirm that it is coming from the reserves and what our reserve balance is before and after this transaction. Specifically, too, though, how much of I know part of the fund balance is restricted, and the other is non-restricted. So I guess it'd be helpful to know that well, so that just we have an idea of as we dip into that piggy bank and continue to dip into that piggy bank, where we stand. So is there someone on finance who can answer questions for me?
Yes, this is CFO Bala. To answer your questions, the first question is, yes, this was budgeted and allocated as a Peach Drop commitment of $500,000. The second question is regarding fund balance. This is not coming from fund balance, but rather it was budgeted non-departmental. So if you recall, non-departmental is a budget item within our budget where we put these things that don't necessarily for the good of the general public. So it was in consulting and professional services line item in non-departmental. Your final question with regards to fund balance, where we ended the year, fiscal year 21, the fund balance was $187 million, and roughly 157 of that was considered unrestricted. What we should note in that unrestricted piece of that 157, there is a piece that is a committed fund balance for the buildings department. So the available for usage is, roughly around $133 billion. We like to keep a good eye on fund balance because there are a general requirement of having 20% of budget available in that unrestricted portion of fund balance. So, on a $700 million budget, that's roughly on a $700 million budget, that's roughly $140 million should be unrestricted, and we're within that guideline. We have a floor, internally for the city of Atlanta to be above 15%. So, but we'd like to stay above 20.
Okay. CFO Bala, thank you for that clarification. And yeah, I will want to take a deeper dive into fund balance conversation and analytics later. But I appreciate the clarification that this is coming from non-departmental. What was the aggregate line item budget for FY22 in that category? And what percent does this represent?
I can get that for you, but I believe it was probably $19 million or so of that aggregate line item, and but I'll confirm it.
Okay, yeah, it'd be good to know what was budgeted, what was spent in the first half of the year, and then what this represents in terms of the remaining. The other question I have is probably more procedural around. So if it was originally budgeted for peach drop, do we have to do anything to unwind that?
No.
And reallocate?
No, because the peach drop would have had to have been legislated as well.
Okay, so it wasn't.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Okay. So we make it available for usage, but then, the departments would need to come with legislation to allocate.
And that never happened. Okay. I appreciate that clarification as well. My final question back to Ms. Love. So you mentioned that the program budget for the Jazz Fest is somewhere between $700,000 and $1 million. What percentage of that is specifically for the weekend performances, and what percentages are for the what I consider ancillary events that lead up to that? If we were to get to the core event that is in the park, that really is the big draw and attendance driver for this event, what's the percentage split between the two?
The bulk of the funding is to produce the festival at Piedmont Park. If you were to take out maybe $10,000 to $15,000, that could be allocated to the neighborhood jazz events. That's just to support backline and, electrical services, some services that we bundle together. But as you know, we started with a clean slate at the park, and we have to actually build the infrastructure. So there's tents and tables and chairs and staging and lighting and backline and trailers and golf carts and fencing and the police support, and there are just lots of costs that make up the bulk of that money. And then we're anticipating this year about $200,000 of that would go towards the actual booking of the performers, payment for them. So Councilmember Bond mentioned that the festival used to be a destination for people to come to Atlanta, and that is really based on the caliber of performers we can afford to bring in. Over the years, we've had to just go with one or two headliners a day because of budget. So if I look at the $700,000 to $1 million budget, almost 75% of that is to actually build the infrastructure in the park.
So going back to my question, so of the $1 million, you said 75% to build the infrastructure, and then you still have to pay the artists on top of that. So are you saying that the bulk of that budget is for the event weekends, not for any of the other extra activities that lead up to the event, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We've looked at the budget for this year, and we're projecting about $650,000 to actually build out the venue.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Any other questions from my colleagues? Is there a motion from a committee member?
This is Wade.
Okay, hang on. There were a bunch of people talking there. Who?
This is CFO Bala. There is.
Yes.
I misspoke. Just to be for the record and clarify, there was legislation for peach drop, and then my understanding is that this legislation would correct for any of that prior legislation that happened in the account string. So we should be good.
Okay. Well, this legislation does not reference that previous legislation. What I want to make sure we do is that we unwind that and decommit those funds so that someone else can come back and say, hey, this is peach drop money.
Okay, we will put that on our to-do list, and if we need a corrective piece, we will coordinate accordingly.
Could we potentially add that to this legislation? Maybe that's a Mr. Kempson-Wright question, or is that a you question?
I think Mr. Kempson-Wright would be the perfect person to answer.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we could make reference in the legislation of the previously adopted legislation that authorized the peach drop last year.
Okay.
And the reallocation of the funds.
Okay.
It was Ordinance 21-0851.
All right. So I would ask if it's a motion that comes for committee that it would be on condition of a substitute at full council that does exactly that. Mr. Shook, I see you in the questions queue again.
Yeah. So thank you. My impression is that because of environmental and financial realities and cultural realities, support for various kind of typical art structures have waned, and maybe this is also another casualty of that. My question is, to what extent are we supposed to make up for what we see the public not willing to pay for?
Let me say this, council member. We haven't ever asked the public to pay for the Atlanta Jazz Festival. And I think that is a conversation we could have in the future, whether or not we want to transition it from a free event to a pay event. I think that people enjoy coming to the Jazz Festival. I think if we were to consider a pay event, then there will be some additional costs because we would have to gate the event and then figure out a ticketing system, to accomplish what you're suggesting. I don't think that when you say the public doesn't want to pay, I don't think that it's the public. I think that there are sponsors who aren't willing to allocate additional money to this when they look at their budget.
Well, and that's my whole point. Yeah, that's fine. So, Mr. Chair, I would like to amend the motion to approve that we receive by Monday the last 10 years of revenues, pros and cons for this event. Thank you.
All right, so there is an amendment on the floor, Mr. Shook. Essentially, you're adding a condition to this. Is that correct? That you want additional reports of the past 10 years?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, I tell you what. Why don't, instead of amending the paper, why don't we make that a condition of whatever? We all have two conditions on the motion. One is that a final substitute that includes reference and canceling out of the peach drop funding, and to transfer to this. And then the second would be the data that you've asked for. So I heard another voice. Was there someone else who had a question or a motion? There's still not a motion on the floor, y'all.
Mr. Chair.
Hello? I heard Councilmember Bond, and I believe it was Waits as well. So Councilmember Bond, please go ahead.
I was going to move the condition that you had mentioned, but I'm prepared to move approval on conditions, both of the conditions that were mentioned.
Okay, so Mr. Bond has put forward a motion to approve on the two conditions, one being the language referencing the peace shop, and the second is the data that Mr. Shook requested. Is there a second to that motion?
Wait, second.
Okay, there's a second from Councilmember Waite. So there is a motion properly made and seconded on the floor. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can we just elaborate real quickly on what the data will be again?
Correct. So Mr. Shook had asked for the past 10 years. It just sounds like kind of the operating budget for the event that also tracks funding sources, sponsorship dollars, city-funded portion. Is that correct, Mr. Shook?
Yeah, no, I want to know how much the public is subsidizing this event.
Yeah.
So would we also be able to include in that data just the attendance?
We produce that readily available?
Yeah. Okay, so attendance, we produce an annual report, one that you got this year. So we will go back and accumulate 10 years of those if we have them. And then relative to the expenses and the contributions, we'll do our best effort to get all of that data. We'll give it our best effort.
Okay. I think also, the key thing that it sounds like Mr. Shook wants is whatever city allocation has been made specifically towards the Jazz Festival to be able to track that. So thank you. Was there someone else who wanted to speak to this? I thought I heard one more voice.
Wait.
Ms. Waits, please. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to direct my question to Ms. Love. Is there any incentive to utilize local Atlanta artists? Example of that would be someone like a P-Bo Bryson who resides here, and so that may cut some of the costs. And secondly, I remembered in the past at a lot of the Atlanta Pride festivals there was a heavy use of volunteers. And so is there a metrics or an opportunity to solicit volunteers to help with some of the labor?
We have speaking first to the issue of volunteers, we have approximately 200 volunteers per festival. And they assist with doing surveying, delivering ice, doing things like that. Relative to Atlanta artists, speaking specifically to P-Bo Bryson, he is not a jazz musician, and so he isn't one that we would put on our bill necessarily. We book Atlanta artists on every Atlanta Jazz Festival. But the Atlanta Jazz Festival has had a history of presenting some of the finest jazz musicians in the world. We've had Nina Simone, Miles Davis, for example. Last year we had Archie Shepp. And so I think that what has to be discussed and decided here is whether or not the city wants to continue to have a free jazz festival. You don't want to have a free jazz festival and you want to look at a revenue model, then we need to explore that for the next festival. The other thing is whether or not you want to have a festival that will bring people into the city to explore the city, or if you just want to have a local event. So those are the considerations that have to be made. But we created the neighborhood jazz event so that we could give an opportunity for local jazz musicians to perform and give them an opportunity to be part of the jazz festival. But sponsors, people who are supporting the festival, really would like to see real jazz performers, nationally identified jazz performers performing. So I will just need get some direction from the council and from the administration as to how we want to proceed with the next jazz festival. Again, this is a tradition that was started by Maynard Jackson 45 years ago. And it is known around the world as the largest free jazz festival with an outstanding reputation for presenting important jazz artists and up-and-coming jazz artists. And so, again, the question is, how we would like to proceed moving forward.
Thank you, Ms. Love.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Bond.
This is Councilmember Winston. I have one quick question.
Oh, Mr. Winston, yes, please.
Ms. Love, is the Atlanta Jazz Festival considered a Class A as far as permit classifications go, or is it a Class B?
It is a Class A.
Okay. All right. Well, I just know it's for everyone's edification that constitutes the level of expenses that go along with the festival, including porta potties and security and other costs that are associated with the festival. So, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Winston. Any other questions? All right. If not, we have a motion before us to approve on condition with the two conditions. If there are no further questions, let's please open the vote.
Mr. Chair, could you confirm who our mover and seconder was?
Mover was Bond, seconded by Waits.
Thank you. One moment. The vote is open. The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 1 abstention. This item is favorable on condition.
Thank you. This motion carries, and it will be brought forward to full council on the 7th. Thank you, Ms. Love. All right, colleagues, we're going to move back to item number 7, item number 22-01032, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee to correct substitute ordinance number 21-00738, adopted by the City Council on October 4th, 2021, and approved per City Charter Section 2-403 on October 13th, 2021, to authorize amendment number 2 for CPS 1200361 with Lidex Inc. for the purpose of correcting the effective contract date named therein and for other purposes. Mr. DeLoach, I believe you are speaking to this paper. All right, is Mr. DeLoach still on the call with us?
One moment, Mr. Chair, we're checking.
Great, thank you.
Yes, he is. He possibly there, but there he is.
There he is, Mr. DeLoach. Please give us information on this paper. Good afternoon.
This is an amendment to the contract with Lytics, which is our driver's risk management system. It's merely asking us to allow us to make an amendment to change the date to be consistent with the underlying contract that we are cooperating.
Any questions from my colleagues? If not, I'll put forward a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Bakhtiari, second.
Seconded by Bakhtiari. Is there any further conversation on this? Seeing none, Ms. Kempson-Wright, if you'll open the vote, please.
One moment. Mr. Chair, it seems like we may be having a system issue, just a slight freeze. So if you don't mind, we'll take a voice vote. I will call everyone. Yes, thanks. Councilmember Alex 1.
Yes.
Councilmember Liliana Bakhtiari.
Yes.
Councilmember Howard Shook.
Aye.
Councilmember Michael Julian Bond.
Aye.
Councilmember Jason Dozier.
Aye.
Councilmember Keisha Sean Waits.
Aye.
And Councilmember Jason Winston.
Aye.
Thank you. And we are population vote now. The system is back with us. 78 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Thank you. The motion carries. Next item is 22-0-1033. Ordinance by Finance Executive Committee to authorize the mayor or his designee to exercise the first renewal option under the cooperative purchasing agreement listed. Kronos Workforce Management Systems with Kronos Incorporated on behalf of the Department of Atlanta Information Management for a term of 1 year, retroactively effective from July 29, 2021 to July 28, 2022, in an amount not to exceed $366,053.54, and to ratify services rendered in connection with the agreement beginning July 29, 2021, in accordance with Section 2-1163, subsection C of Article 10, Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances. All contractor work to be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. The administration department has asked to hold this paper, so I'll put forward a motion to hold. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Shook. So motion by Juan, second by Shook. Ms. Kempson Wright. I see the system is working. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Waits is aye.
Councilmember Bond.
Aye.
Will everyone please vote? Thank you. The vote is closed. 78 0 nays. This item is held.
Okay, motion carries. The item is held. Next item is item number 9, 22-0-1034, and without objection, we'll also take this together with item 12, 22-0-1037. I will read in the captions. An ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to grant a permanent easement over a portion of city-owned property consisting of approximately 1,299.13 square feet of land, more or less, located at the intersection of Freedom Parkway Northeast and Moreland Avenue Northeast, Atlanta, Georgia, 30307, DeKalb County and Land Lot 240, 15th District, with no tax parcel identification number available, to the Georgia Department of Transportation for the installation and maintenance of a traffic signal as part of their traffic signal improvement project, waiving any conflicting provisions of Article 10, Division 14, subsection 3 of the Atlanta City Code, and for other purposes. And item number 12, companion paper 22-0-1037. Ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to grant a permanent easement over a portion of city-owned property consisting of approximately 1,292.95 square feet of land, more or less, located in land lot number 14 of the 14th District, Fulton County, Georgia, tax parcel identification numbers listed, with an address of 0 Moreland Avenue, Northeast Atlanta, Georgia, 30307. To the Georgia Department of Transportation for the installation and maintenance of a traffic signal as part of their traffic signal improvement projects, waiving any conflicting provisions of Article 10, Division 14, subsection 3 of the Atlanta City Code, and for other purposes. Before I call on Mr. Voss, Ms. Kempson Wright, can we take action on both items together, or do we have to vote on them separately in e-order?
We will be able to take all of them together, and Mr. Chair, it should have been items 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Right. Very good. So, colleagues, we're going to try and speed this up even more. So 10 and 11 are going to jump into the hopper with this. 22-0-1035, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to grant a permanent easement over a portion of city-owned property consisting of approximately 210.5 square feet of land, more or less, located in land lot 77 of the 14th District, Fulton County, Georgia, tax parcel identification number 14 are listed, with an address of 0 Ted Turner Drive, Atlanta, Georgia, 30303. The Georgia Department of Transportation for the installation and maintenance of a traffic signal as part of their traffic signal improvement projects, waiving any conflicting provisions of Article 10, Division 14, subsection 3 of the Atlanta City Code, and for other purposes. And item 11, 22-0-1036, an ordinance by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to grant a permanent easement over a portion of city-owned property consisting of approximately 139.28 square feet of land, more or less, located in land lot 84, the 14th District, Fulton County, Georgia, tax parcel ID number listed, with an address of 0 Larkin Street, Atlanta, Georgia, 30314. To the Georgia Department of Transportation for the installation and maintenance of a traffic signal as part of their traffic signal improvement projects, waiving any conflicting provisions of Article 10, Division 14, subsection 3 of the Atlanta City Code, for other purposes. Hopefully that bought us enough time to find and confirm Mr. Voss on the phone. Mr. Voss.
Hi, Chairman Juan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please proceed and tell us about these papers.
Well, thank you so much for reading all those in. So good afternoon, and also to members of council. This is Doug Voss with the Office of Parks and Recreation. These ordinances are taken as a whole for the granting of easements for traffic signaling as stated by GDOT. The 4 locations that are listed are Cleophas Johnson Park, the green space at Ted Turner and Trinity Street, and 2 locations along Moreland Avenue, one in Freedom Park, and one is what we call the Reynoldstown Gateway. These easements have been reviewed by the Office of Parks Design, as well as the city's real estate office and law office, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about them.
All right, colleagues, any questions for Mr. Voss on these 4 papers? Well, Mr. Chair. All right, seeing that, I heard a motion from Mr. Bond to approve all 4.
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bond, please ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, Mr. Voss, I mean, what are these easements for? I missed that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. They're actually for traffic signaling. So it'll actually be a new crosswalk and signal. We actually think that'll help pedestrian and traffic flow by these locations.
Okay, move approval, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bond. Motion to approve all 4. Is there a second?
Second by Waits.
Second by Waits. Thank you. We have a motion properly second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. Waits says aye. Thank you. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. These items are favorable.
All right, motion carries on all 4. Thank you, Mr. Voss.
Mr. Chair, we have the Parks and Rec available. Is it possible that I could request that I chat offline with him surrounding the pickleball conversation?
Absolutely.
Mr. Voss, would you be the right person for that from Parks and Rec?
I'm happy to take that call. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're on to item number 13, 22-01066, an ordinance by Council Member Alex Juan to ratify Mayor Andre Dickens' executive order directing the Chief Financial Officer and the Commissioner of the Department of Human Resources to extend implementation of the City of Atlanta's Employment Vaccination Incentive Program, whereby city employees receiving their initial COVID-19 vaccinations between September 15, 2021 and December 31st, 2021, and city employees receiving a COVID-19 vaccine booster between October 18, 2021 and December 31st, 2021 were eligible to receive a one-time $100.00 incentive payment, such that the implementation of the City of Atlanta Employment Vaccination Incentive Program shall continue through June 30th, 2022, and for other purposes. Commissioner Norman, I believe, is going to speak to this paper for us. Commissioner. Is Mr. Norman or anyone from Human Resources available to speak to this?
Good afternoon, Councilmember Juan. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. Yes, please proceed.
Yes, this is Jeffrey Norman, Commissioner for the Department of Human Resources. And so this piece of legislation, as indicated, is to extend the application of the current vaccination incentive program for the City of Atlanta. The city implemented back in September a vaccination incentive program where employees became eligible to receive $100 for either their first or second vaccination shot. We later extended that program in October so that those individuals who then became eligible to receive the COVID-19 booster shot would also be eligible to receive a $100 incentive as well. We currently, track that data. There is a validation process that is in place where employees provide documentation to the city through the Department of Human Resources so that we can validate receipt of those vaccinations. We then, in turn, work with the Department of Finance to issue those payments through our payroll cycle. So we coordinate that on a monthly basis. Based on some of the questions that were posed, I know at the briefing, I do have some data points I did want to share with the committee. And so to date, from a participation standpoint, we have had 325 employees who have received the vaccine incentive benefit for first and second COVID vaccination shots. For the booster shot, we have validated 1,411 employees who have received the booster vaccination incentive. And so to date, for those first and second shots where those individuals have been validated, the city has at this point paid out $32,500. And for booster shots, the current payout to date is $141,100. When we talked about identification for the source of funding, those payments, those incentives follow along with existing personnel budgets that are allocated to each of our departments and agencies. So those travel along with those pre-identified budgeted amounts at the personnel salary line. And the last inquiry was relative to projected spend. Based on our current head count at the city, based on those individuals who remain eligible, we would anticipate that for those folks who will be eligible to benefit from a potential vaccination incentive for a first or second shot, that at a high end would be $194,400. And for those individuals who would be eligible still to receive a vaccination booster incentive, that would be at the high end $474,500. And so in total, that would leave us with a projected top spend of approximately $668,900. And once again, those would be absorbed from operating departments' personnel budgets.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Questions from my colleagues? I see Mr. Shook in the queue. You have the floor, Mr. Shook.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been badgered via email about the need to provide my, history of being vaccinated, and I've had every vaccination I'm eligible for. What happens to those employees who don't?
For those individuals who do not submit the information?
Correct.
And so, as I think you're aware, there is currently, we went through a process where we did do a mandatory self-certification of vaccination status. And so that was a separate process so we could just understand what from a health and wellness standpoint and a protection
are they fired?
standpoint.
Are they fired? What?
No, sir. And so the city has not at this point made any policy determination about a mandatory vaccination at the city. So there has not been a policy decision that has been made at this point that vaccination is a condition of employment at the city of Atlanta.
Well, why all the email badgering?
So there is I'm not aware of any email badgering. We do, in line with the medical data, we still believe, as all of the medical professionals have advised, that vaccination is the best protection against the COVID vaccine. So we do encourage those individuals.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you right there. Everyone gets vaccinated. Everyone get their booster. I get all that. I've been badgered. I will never submit that information. So you can come get me with the SWAT team, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shook. Other questions from my colleagues on this paper? And Mr. Norman, I appreciate you providing the information and the data points. I'll go ahead and put forward a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Bakhtiari.
Seconded by Bond. I heard first, Councilmember Bakhtiari, but motion by Juan, second by Bond. I'll get you next time.
I'll hold you to that.
Please open the vote. Thank you.
The vote is open. Councilmember Waite.
Aye.
The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, colleagues. All right, we've taken care of number 14. That takes us to item number 15, 22-0-1075, ordinance by Councilmember Andrea Boone, authorizing the transfer of $30,000.00 from the Council District 10 carry forward account to the Council District 10 expense account and for other purposes. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve on her behalf. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Shook. Bakhtiari, was your chance to I would, though, before we move on this paper for the benefit of the new council members, Mr. Theo Pace or Ms. Kempton Wright, just kind of a quick explanation of how the verification and accounting works when this happens. Mr. Pace on the line, or Ms. Kempton Wright, are you fielding that discussion?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. How are you?
Mr. Pace, thank you. Please enlighten us.
Sure. Theo Pace, City Council Staff Director. The staff utilizes the monthly funds available report provided by the Department of Finance each month, which tracks expenditures from all City Council members' accounts. And we also have internal controls that we use to track each piece of legislation transferring funds from those accounts based off of the carry forward true-up, which is completed by the Department of Finance in the fall. So we track every expenditure or transfer of funds from the carry forward, whether that's to expense, to their distribution account, or personnel accounts. And we can give an up-to-date, accurate figure of what their balance is based on requests. Of course, council members that have just come in this past month start off with a zero balance, and their carry forward is basically determined on how the funds that they carry over from the FY22 budget to FY23. So right now, members are starting with a zero balance. And I've met individually with pretty much all of the members and went over their carry forward, their funds available reports with them to answer any questions or anything that they may have about any of those accounts.
Councilmember One, I believe you may be muted.
Oh, I sure am. So if there are no further discussion on this, there's a motion that's properly second. Please open the vote. Sorry about that.
The vote is open.
Wait, says aye.
Councilmember Bunn.
Aye.
The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Motion carries. This paper moves forward. All right, next we're now into resolutions. First one is 22-R-3060, resolution by Councilmember Alex Swan authorizing the Chief Financial Officer to refund customers for overpayments to water and sewer accounts in an amount of blank. All funds to be charged to and paid from fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed and for other purposes. Colleagues, this is our shell paper that we will hold until Watershed comes forward with actual amounts to refund. So I'll make a motion to hold. Is there a second?
Second.
Bakhtiari, second.
Seconded by Bakhtiari. There you go. Any discussion? All right, if not, let's open the vote.
The vote is open.
Wait, says aye.
Councilmember Bunn.
Aye.
Thank you. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is held.
All right, motion carries. This item is held. Next item is 22-R-3129, resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to exercise the first renewal option for request for proposal number
FC 10364, fiber connections and maintenance with Southern Telecom, Inc. on behalf of the Department of Atlanta Information Management for a term of 2 years effective from March 25th, 2022 through March 24th, 2024, in an amount not to exceed $6,000.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Department has requested that we hold this paper, waiting additional information. We'll move to hold. Is there a second? Seconded. Was that Shook?
No,
yeah.
Bond.
Okay, heard Bond. Motion by Juan, second by Bond. If there's no further discussion, please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Wait, who's aye?
Thank you. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is held.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Your next item is 22-R3130. Yes, Mr. Bond.
I apologize for interrupting you, but I need to be excused from the balance of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bond. Thank you for letting us know.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Kempson-Wright, if you'll note that for subsequent votes.
Yes.
Okay, 22-R3130, resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to issue task order number FC 10641E 105 for contract FC 10641E, job order contracting services small with FH Passion SN Nielsen and Associates LLC for Fire Station 1288 upgrades and renovations on behalf of the Department of Enterprise Asset Management in an amount not to exceed $403,288.45. All work to be charged and paid from accounts listed and for other purposes. I believe Mr. Santil is going to be speaking to this. Are you on the line with us?
Can you hear me, Councilman?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Please proceed.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Yes, this resolution is pretty straightforward. It is in reference to the renovations of the Fire Station 12.
Questions from my colleagues on this paper?
Second.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve, seconded by Shook. There's no further discussion. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Wait, who's aye?
The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. The next item is number 19, 22-R3131, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute the First Amendment to Agreement FC 8871, T-Mobile USA, Inc., wireless voice data services with T-Mobile USA, Inc., on behalf of the Department of Atlanta Information Management to extend the term of the agreement for 4 months, effective from February 16, 2022 through June 30, 2022, and to add funding in an amount not to exceed $304,715.78. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the Fund Department organization account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. Colleagues, we have an amendment for this. You have it in your packet, but it amends the legislation to update the funding accounts listed in the second resolve clause. I will make a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Yeah.
All right, second, Shook. Amendment has been properly moved and seconded. Let's open the vote to that, and then we can hear from the department on the paper.
The vote is open.
Wait, who's aye?
One moment. The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. The amendment is before you.
Okay, we have amended the paper before us. I believe Ms. Brittany Carter is going to speak to this paper. Ms. Carter, are you on the line with us?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good afternoon. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. This is Chief Technology Officer Brittany Carter. With me today are Chief Information Officer Jason Sankey and our Deputy CIO Aaron Baugh. This legislation is an amendment to the existing contract extending the agreement by 4 months to align with expiration date of the cooperative agreement that City of Atlanta is utilizing. As you mentioned, this amendment also includes a change to the department number for payment for 311. Just for additional awareness, once this cooperative agreement refreshes, we will then amend the agreement again to extend it out an additional 8 months. That will total 1 year.
All right, questions for Ms. Carter? If not, I'll put forward a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I've heard a lot, but I'll take second by Bakhtiari. If there's no further discussion, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
Wait. Aye.
The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable as amended.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Next item is 22-R3132, resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute amendment number 3 to sole source agreement number listed IBM Maximo Asset Management Annual Software Subscription and Support Services with International Business Machines Corporation to add additional services on behalf of the Department of Enterprise Asset Management and for other purposes. Mr. Santiel, I believe you are going to speak to this.
To add the cloud service. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, this resolution simply just adds the cloud services to our existing agreement.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues on this paper? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bakhtiari. So no further discussion, and we have a motion that's been made and properly seconded. Let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
Wait. Aye.
The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
All right. The motion carries. Paper will move forward. The next item is number 21. 22-R-3133, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute sole source agreement number listed emergency police and emergency medical dispatch protocol systems with Medical Priority Consultants, Inc., doing business as Priority Dispatch, pursuant to Section 2-1191 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department for a term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options in an amount not to exceed $1,038,957.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department organization account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. And I want to acknowledge that all of the iPro supporting documents are in the package. I believe Deputy Chief Celeste Murphy is speaking to this paper. Deputy Chief.
Hello?
Are you there? Hello? Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Deputy Chief, are you there to speak to this paper?
Yes, I am.
So can you give us background on it and why it's needed, please?
Hello? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm having issues with my mute button. In reference to the legislation is for the software for the 911 dispatch and fire dispatch.
Okay, do we have any questions for Deputy Chief while she's on the call with us on this paper? Okay, I don't see anyone in the queue. With that, then I will make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Winston.
Second by Winston. Motion by Juan, second by Winston. Any further discussion on the motion to approve? If not, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
Wait. Aye.
The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
All right. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item is and this should be our last item, 22-R3134, a resolution by Finance Executive Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee to execute special procurement
agreement number listed, Canine Veterinary Services with VCA Animal Hospitals, Inc., on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department, pursuant to Section 2-1191.1 of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances for a term of 3 years with 1 2-year renewal option in an amount not to exceed $180,000 annually. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the Fund Department Organization account number listed herein and for other purposes. Deputy Chief Murphy, I believe you're speaking to this one as well.
Yes, thank you. This is in reference to veterinary services and maintenance for Mountain Patrol. I'm sorry, for our K9 unit.
All right, any questions for Deputy Chief Murphy? All right, is there a motion? I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second? Dozier second. One motion, Dozier second. Any further questions or discussion on this paper? All right, seeing none, let's open the vote, please.
The vote is open.
Wait says aye.
The vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Ms. Kempson-Wright, that takes us to papers held in committee. I don't believe either one of them are coming off. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I believe that concludes the business, the legislation before us. Is there anything else from my colleagues for the good of the order?
Mr. Chair, this is Wade.
Yeah, Councilmember Wade, yes, please.
Yes, sir. So can I make the request then that the committee request this information for HOPWA, given that there's so much conversation surrounding that? I do know that there were some items that Councilmember Bakhtiari mentioned in the other committees. However, I just believe that there needs to be some type of high-level audit or documentation provided surrounding funding. And my second question is the same surrounding the 911 fees. It's my understanding that there are 47 employees that are impacted at the 911 center who serve as dispatchers who were promised this funding. And so I would like to know, what the status of that is, given that the state has not yet released the funds.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Wade. So I'll take the second one first. So to the Finance Department, when you present the quarterly reports at our next meeting on the 16th, there will be a number of payroll questions, the 911 question, and I'm fielding some questions also about fire. So I guess I'm just sending the signal that please either have y'all or HR ready to address those. And Councilmember Waits, to the extent that you and I can get the specifics over to Finance and HR ahead of time so they'll be ready to bring us detailed information. Let's try and do that, okay? The second piece on HOPWA, Councilmember Dozier, I hope you're still on the line. You and I, let's huddle after this and figure out what the best approach is. It's a really complex and complicated program or involved program that has a lot of different pieces of it that involve both of our committees. I don't know if we need to do a work session on that or if there's a way of sequencing it through our committees, but let's figure out a strategy on that. So I agree with you, Councilmember Waits. That we got to get into it and get into the weeds as well. Councilmember Dozier, are you on? Is that okay with you?
Yep, it's okay with me.
Okay. And Councilmember Waits, are you good with those two strategies on the two issues you brought up?
I think that's perfect. And I was just simply trying to avoid having communication going over to the grants department that's already probably been requested. So I didn't want to duplicate any efforts out there.
Yeah, I think this is perfect to have our two committee chairs talking to each other and then coordinating, information request briefings or work sessions on that. So thank you. Yeah. Good suggestions. Any other committee members have anything? All right. Thank you very much. If not, then we stand adjourned. Thank you very much, and we'll see y'all on February 16th.
Thank you, Mr.
Have a good
Chair.
day, everybody.